Hello. So in this video we'll be seeing about the SyncIQ practicals. So for the SyncIQ, get into the data protection and SyncIQ. So now this is the SyncIQ tab. So here you can see the summary page, policy, reports, local target, performance rule and settings. So we'll see one by one. So here you can see the active SyncIQ jobs that are running. So whenever there's a new job that is running, so that particular job details will be seen here. So here you can see the status of the job, policy name, and the policy status, and at what time it has started, and what is the elapsed time, how much capacity is being transferred, and source directory and the target host, and what are the actions that you can do. So, and here you can see the reports. So what are all the SyncIQ jobs that are already completed, and those reports will be here. So basically the summary will give a overview about the active jobs and the recent completed reports. So on the policies tab you can see what are the policies that are available. So for this particular cluster, what are the policies that you have created? What are the basically the path or the data that is being sent to the replicating target cluster. So on the create SyncIQ policy, we will now create a new policy. I will just give us test SyncIQ. Description I leave it empty. So I just want to enable this policy, and here I have action which says copy and synchronize. So these two are the types of SyncIQ actions available. The copy action will do what will do is that it will just copy whatever the data that is there in the source to the target. Let's say if you have a data and you just give a copy, and the exact copy gets replicated to the target, and when you delete something here, that will not get impacted on the target. Whereas in sync, this synchronize will try to keep a consistent copy of both source and the target. In the sense, whatever has been made, changes made on the source, that particular changes will be made on the target on this particular job's next run. So let's say you are deleting a particular data on source, and on the next run the same data will be deleted on the target. So in this sense, it will try to uh, keep both source and the target in a consistent state. So you will be using the synchronize when in terms of DR. When you want to set up a DR, you will go for synchronize, and when you want to have a backup, then you should go for a copy action, so that whatever data is being deleted here, that can be retrieved on the target cluster. So when your purpose is for a backup, go for copy, and when you have a DR purpose, go for a synchronize action. So coming down, so I'll keep it as a copy. Coming down, run job. So in what way you want to run this job, whether you want to run this job manually or on a schedule basis, or whenever the source is modified, or whenever a snapshot of source directory is taken. So these are all the available options that you can do. So manual is nothing but you just have to run it manually, and on schedule is you can schedule it on time basis. Whenever you want to run this particular job, the policy on daily basis, or run multiple policies, multiple times per day. So whatever thing you can schedule it here. And the third option is whenever the source is modified. So this particular option is to keep your source and the target data consistent. So whenever there's a new write happening on the source folder, the source directory, once that particular file is being written, the same file will be replicated to the target folder. So once the source is modified and completed, the job runs. So this is how the job schedule is. So whenever there's any change happening on the source folder, that particular change immediately will get replicated to the target. So this is like when you have a sensitive data and you want to have a consistent copy, and you don't have to for each and every minute of the time you want to keep a consistent copy, then you will need to go for this particular whenever the source is modified option. And you have to make sure that when you click this, when you select this option, you will have a more number of traffic happening, as whenever there is a new write happening, that particular change will get replicated. So the traffic will be keep on going on, and there will not be like so depending upon in the files that is being written in the source, the traffic will get increased. So you should keep this in mind when you set up this particular option. And whenever a snapshot of the source directory is taken, so this option is like, so whenever you have a snapshot, let's say you have a directory and you have snapshot enabled for that particular directory. So whenever that particular directory snapshot is taken, and that particular time you want to give a replication copy to the target cluster. So this is like you can keep both the snapshot copy and the SyncIQ copy on the same timing. You can go for this particular option. So whenever there is a snapshot taking on that particular directory, the job runs. So you can give the option like you can give the snapshot name whichever is configured on this particular path. So that particular the snapshot name will get matched, and so that will be taken as the source snapshot. So whenever the snapshot is taken on that particular snapshot name, the job runs. So here in whenever the source is modified option, you have an option called change triggered sync job delay. So when you want to give a small delay, you can do that. So let's say a source is modified and you want to wait for some more time. Let's say at 10 o'clock the source is modified. When you give this 0, at 10 o'clock itself the job, the replication job will start. And when you want to give some delay, then you can go for this, whatever the timing you want to delay this for 2 minutes, then it will wait for 2 more minutes and will start the job. And coming down, you have an option called source cluster. So this particular option will completely deal with the source clusters detail. So here you can see the source cluster directory, and this particular source cluster, source root directory is all about the path which you want to replicate to the target cluster. So here in this case, I want to replicate the NFS CLI folder completely. So whatever the data below this NFS CLI folder will get replicated to the target. And here you have an option called include directories. So let's say below this directory I have so many other directories. I just want to include only this particular directory, or I just want to only exclude a few directories. I don't want those directories to be replicated. You can do that as well. So you can just give the path or the folder which you want to include or exclude. Coming down, and file matching criteria, we can also give some conditions based upon the path. So let's say in this path I want to have a condition like file type. So in this path I want to take only the file type, file name, or like .pdf file names. So whatever the PDF file names only I want to replicate. So you can use some conditions on the matching criteria. And coming down, you have a restrictions source node. So here you have an option called run the policy on all the nodes in the cluster, or run the policy on any nodes in the specified subnet and pool. So here comes the smart connect that we saw earlier. So usually what they do is that in production, when you have a replication happening on the SyncIQ, so they will dedicate one particular separate pool for this particular replication to happen. So they don't want to touch the data pool whichever the user is accessing. So what they'll do is that they'll create a separate pool inside a subnet, combining all the X series or NL series, whichever according to the performance. They'll combine all the interfaces of the X series or NL series nodes, and they will create a separate pool named as a replication pool. So you can use this particular pool dedicatedly for replication purpose. So in that case, pick this second option, run the policy only on the nodes in a specified pool or subnet. And when you create the subnet, the pool, it will show up here, and you can select that. So whenever the replication is happening, this will happen only through this particular smart connect zone, so that it will not disturb the other nodes in the cluster. And when you go for this run the policy on all nodes in the cluster, so this will take any of the nodes in the cluster and it randomly it will send the data. So there will not be like any dedicated path for sending the data to the target cluster. Coming down, you have a target cluster details. So here you have to enter the FQDN of the target cluster. So each cluster will have the FQDN or the smart connect zone name, and also you can give the IP as well. So you have to mention the target host name. Coming down, the directory. So which directory you want this particular the source directory NFS CLI to be replicated. So I will it's recommended to give the same path, the same name for the path in the target directory as well, so that you will be able to recognize from where this is coming to which particular directory it's coming, and what is the source cluster for this particular target cluster. So easily you will be able to find out when you check the directory. So NFS CLI, and I'll just give a random IP. So here there's an option called connect only to the nodes within the smart connect zone on the target cluster. So if at all there is any smart connect zone on the target cluster, you can connect to only those nodes, and if at all, then it will just go up to any one of the nodes. Coming down, you have an option called enable the capture of snapshot on the target cluster. So as we saw this one as local clusters snapshot, the file system snapshot is that will be taken by default, and when you want to enable the same in the target cluster, so this will be used when there is a failover and failback purpose. And when you enable this one, the snapshot will also be taken on the target cluster as well, and you can give the name of the snapshot. So this default snapshot that is taken for SyncIQ will be named as, it will have a naming pattern as SIQ in front. So the source clusters snapshot also will have a naming pattern like SIQ. So each policy will have only one local snapshot. So that will be the latest one. So whenever there's a change happening, that change will be implemented on that particular snapshot, and that will be renamed as a latest. So that if you want to find out what is the snapshot taken by this policy, then you'll have to go by the SyncIQ pattern and followed with the policy name. So if you want to go with this target snapshots, then click on the enable this option, so that it will take on the target as well. And expiration, so if you want to give some expiration time, then you can mention that, or if you don't want to expire the snapshot, then give the snapshot do not expire option. And the advanced settings, you can leave it as default. So that's it about the policy. Now we are done. I'm going to create the policy. So once I've created the policy, you can see the policy name, the state is enabled, and last known good. So you need to, whenever you have a policy, you need to check this particular option, the last known good. So whenever the policy that has completed recently will show when this policy has recently completed successfully, that is called the last known good. So in this case it says no success, that means this policy that has not been ran success even one time. And the schedule is manual, source directory is this one, and the target host IP and its directory. So what are the options that we have? So here we have disable policy, start job, sync, async sync, and resync preparation, reset sync, and delete. So this async access sync is the option that is used at the creation of the policy only once. So this particular, when you run this click on this access sync option, this particular policy will start running as an assessment. So this particular policy will start running, and it will show you how much time that would take to complete this policy and how much data is there that is replicated. So this will just run only the assessment. So to just check, get an insight of how much data that is gonna be sent or how much time this particular policy would run. So when you want to run a real job, then go and just start the job. So this is currently running. So here you can see. So it says 0 bytes, and this particular job should fail as we don't have the target. Okay, so here in the job summary, you can see once the job is completed, you can see how many number of directories are being replicated, how many number of files, and what is the file data transfer size, and what are the snapshots that is taken in the target and local. So everything will show you here. What is the policy name, and here you will see the job details and if there is any error reported and how much time this particular policy took. So all these things you can see here. So I'm canceling this job. So once this is done, then you will be able, once the assessment is done, then you can go for a real job by just clicking the start job. And coming to the reports tab, so here you can see this test SyncIQ that we ran is showing the status as failed. So let's see what is the reason. So view details, it says source node could not connect to the target node. As we haven't given an exact target node, it says that it cannot connect to the target node as the IP is not a valid one. So this is how we will find out the error. So here it will show the error, what is the error that has occurred and what made this policy fail. So once this policy is completed, it will show a success, and you can see how many number of files that has been completed, sent, and what is the source directory, and if at all any directory that has been deleted here, it will show the deleted directory in the target. And here it will show sub reports. Let's say if one particular policy has not ran successfully, then again the policy will try to run. So it will show if there are too many policies, the same policy that has run too many times, it will show all the timings at what time this policy ran. So all the different jobs it will show here. So this is all about the reports tab. And local target. So this local target is nothing but this particular tab will show you the policies that are coming from another cluster, and this particular cluster being a target for another source cluster. So those policies will show here as a local target. So let me repeat it. So this local target will show the SyncIQ policies that are coming from another cluster. So in that case, this particular cluster will become the target for those policies. So in that case, it will show the local target. So in this case, when we have created this test SyncIQ policy and this target as this particular IP, when you log into this cluster and you check the local target, then this SyncIQ policy will show as a local target in that particular target host. The same way, so this particular cluster will act as a target for few of the clusters. There will be there may be scenarios where you will replicate in a vice versa. So you will have A and B cluster. The data from the A will replicate to B, and the data from B will replicate to A. So both will be acting as a production and as a DR. So it's like vice versa replication. So in that case, you can see both local targets here. And performance rules. So these performance rules are nothing but you can create performance rules, like you can like set up a bandwidth, a rule type where you should use this particular SyncIQ policies should use only a particular time amount of bandwidth on the entire cluster. So let's say you might have peak hours according to your business. Let's say from Monday to Friday morning 9 to 12 p.m. So let's say these are the peak hours, and you will have more number of traffic from the users on the cluster, and you don't want to affect those traffics by the SyncIQ policies. Then you can limit the bandwidth during that particular time alone. So let's say I will fix only to 100 kbps of bandwidth between Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. So in this case, whatever SyncIQ policy jobs that are running between Monday to Friday between 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. can maximum utilize only 100 kbps. So apart from that, it will not go. So during that time, when there is a policy running, will take more amount of time to send the data comparatively to the normal timing. I mean, comparatively, it will take the maximum bandwidth when there is no rule applied upon. So the rule type is based on the bandwidth, file count, and we can go with CPU, percentage, or worker nodes. So you can limit with any other things. If you want to go for CPU, then maximum of utilization of CPU might be 60% only, or can go for 30%. Or when you go for the file count, you can send only like 500 files per second or just 50 files per second. So you can set up any of the rule type accordingly. So this particular performance rule will be applied according to the specified schedule. So it's always recommended to run the policies at end of the day. So when let's say when you have a policy that is going to be run every day, then it's always recommended that you run that particular policy at end of business day. So that you will not have any impact to the business, and the SyncIQ policy will also will not take much time to replicate, as the traffic will be less during non-business hours. And settings. So here you can see these are all the general common settings. So the SyncIQ service should be on, and when it's off, then the SyncIQ policies will not run, and also when it is paused. So these are all some default settings. Whenever there is no policy set, this default policies will take effect. So but we have policies, I mean each policies have their own settings, and these are all some default. And when you want to archive the reports, so here you can give like how many number of reports per policy should be retained. So here you can see there are 2000 by default, and the report retention period is for 1 year. So these are all the SyncIQ settings, I mean the practicals. So let's see a few comments on the CLI as well. So on the CLI, so it's like just sync jobs reports. So reports a list. So this will list all the SyncIQ job reports that has completed recently. And if you want to check the sync jobs view, and you want to view one particular job, then you can just give the job ID and view that. You see jobs list. So here you can see the jobs that are running. So right now there are no jobs. So easy sync policies list. So this will list all the existing policies that you have. So here you can see only one policy that we created, and you see sync rules. If you want to check the rules, you can list the rules here. So there are no rules. Sync target list, the local targets. So there are no local targets, so it's empty. So these are all the comments that you can use for the SyncIQ. and I always recommended to create a SyncIQ policy in GUI, as the options are very simple and straightforward. So also you can, if you are good with the CLI commands, then you can go with the CLI commands as well for creating a SyncIQ policy. And that's it for this lecture. We'll see on the next lecture.